Morning sunlight streams in through the large, solemn windows of the courthouse, falling across polished wooden benches that seem almost too heavy with the weight of anticipation. Kody sits at the center table, his body tense beneath a crisp suit, his hands folded tightly in front of him, twitching with almost every word of the bailiff calling the room to order. Across the room, his wives Robyn, Christine, Janelle, and Meri gaze with keen and wary eyes full of unspoken resentments. Even from the back of the courtroom, you can feel the electric charge of decades of hidden conflicts ready to erupt into the open. Today is not just another hearing. Today, secrets that have simmered quietly behind closed doors for years will finally face the unforgiving light of justice. Everyone knows that when the doors close, the courtroom walls do not hold back, they do not whisper, they do not soften, they reveal. And for the Brown family, the revelations are poised to be explosive. Kody shifts slightly in his seat. A man normally comfortable dealing with complex family dynamics, this patriarch has done his best to balance the needs and wants of multiple wives, but even he appears unsteady now. The first to speak is the prosecuting attorney, a female who commands respect without flinching in the face of the family drama into which she has stepped. She starts with sharp, almost surgical precision. The accusations against them are serious financial mismanagement, concealment of assets, and disputes over property that have escalated well beyond private arguments into a legal battleground. Christine listens, her jaw tightening. Her hands laid across her lap clench of their own accord. Her mind flickers to images. Years of being overlooked, whispered conversations in dark corners of the house, promises that never seem to be kept. She has learned how to steel herself in public, but even experience cannot fully mask the storm building inside her. Janelle fidgets across the aisle, tapping a pen against the table. She wants to remain composed, but it would seem that each tap echoes her racing heartbeat. Meri, ever the quiet observer, sits a little apart, eyes scanning the room, hawk-like, noting who says what, who looks where, who can be trusted. And Robyn. Robyn's face is set in hurt and determination. She is ready to fight, to protect herself and her children, to finally have her voice heard in a family where it has often been drowned out. The judge enters, and a hush descends. Even the least rustle of papers or the slightest cough sounds amplified in the sudden stillness. The gavel strikes. The session begins. The prosecuting attorney calls his first witness, a financial consultant who has worked with Kody on several family projects. The consultant takes a seat, fidgeting with the microphone. I was asked to review the family accounts. He starts off, strained but steady in his voice under the weight of the courtroom gaze. What I found was irregularities. A ripple runs through the room. Kody's lips go firm. Christine exhales audibly out her nostrils. Janelle fidgets in her seat, as if trying to absorb the words without showing her shock. Robyn grips the table's edge, knuckles whitening. Meri raises her eyebrows, incredulous. The consultant lays out numbers, transfers, and investments that seem harmless at first glance, but when pieced together, paint a picture of selective favoritism and hidden transactions. Some funds were moved without the knowledge of all family members. He continues, eyes flicking nervously to Kody, and in some cases decisions were made that benefited one individual disproportionately over the others. Kody sits back in an attempt to maintain a facade of calm, but even the slight shaking of his hand as he readjusts his tie betrays him. Christine mutters in barely audible tones, almost to herself. Finally, it's all coming out. The calm and composed criminal defense attorney rises, belying the storm brewing in the courtroom. Your Honor, these transactions were discussed privately, and all decisions were made with the family's best interest in mind. She argues, her voice steady but firm. There is no intent to deceive or harm anyone. The prosecuting attorney is undeterred. She reaches for a folder full of emails, texts, and handwritten notes. Each one exposes conversations Kody had with some wives, but not all, promises that were broken, and plans that were kept secret. With each word, the room tightens. Christine's eyes widen. Janelle swallows the lump in her throat, fighting off tears. Robyn bites her lip, her face pale. Meri leans forward, tension emitting with every movement. The session wears on, and the intensity in the courtroom increases. One witness after another speaks of favoritism, selective decision-making, and unspoken resentment that has been festering over years. The emotional weight is palpable. Kody tries to defend himself, his voice cracking at times to betray the strain he feels under the scrutiny of the court, not to mention that of his family. And then the first clash begins. Christine stands up, her voice trembling yet firm, and speaks directly to her husband. Kody, for years you've made decisions without telling me, promises without keeping them. I've stayed silent, hoping you'd change, but today, I can't anymore. I need the truth in this courtroom, not excuses. The room is silent for a heartbeat, and then the tension erupts. Robyn's eyes fill with tears as she struggles to speak, trying to articulate her own grievances without letting anger overtake her. Normally composed, Janelle breaks down quietly, covering her face with a handkerchief. Meri remains stoic, but the slightest quiver in her lip betrays the weight of what's happening. Kody looks around at the women who have been part of his life for decades. He sees the pain in their eyes, the years of resentment and hurt that have been building silently, waiting for a moment like this. He opens his mouth to try to speak, but the words come out haltingly, fragmented by guilt, shame, and confusion. At this moment, tension in the courtroom reaches a new height. The audience in the gallery shifts uncomfortably, sensing that something monumental is about to be revealed. The prosecuting attorney pulled out one last thing, a recorded conversation of a private discussion where promises were made and then broken. The sound fills the room, echoing against the high ceilings, each word landing like a hammer. Christine flinches. Robyn gasps. Janelle looks down, her body shaking. Meri's hand tightens on the bench in front of her. Kody swallows hard, his eyes darting around as if searching for an escape that does not exist. The judge calls for a short recess, giving everyone a chance to process what has just unfolded. Outside the courtroom, whispers and murmurs fill the hallways. The family members retreat to separate rooms, each fighting feelings of betrayal, anger, and sorrow that threaten to consume them all. Kody paces, trying to make sense of the storm he's walked into. Christine clutches a notebook full of compiled notes and questions she has been gathering for years. Robyn sits quietly, rocking slightly as she fights off impending tears. Janelle leans against a wall, her face a mask of composure hiding inner turmoil. Meri remains distant, lost in thought, but even she cannot fully mask the impact of the morning's revelations. As the session prepares to resume, a sense of anticipation hangs in the air. The first witness testimony has set the stage for a deeper, more intense confrontation. The audience senses that what comes next will not only test the family's legal boundaries, but also their emotional resilience. Secrets are no longer whispers. They are weapons, and the next round of questioning promises to cut deeper than anyone could imagine. Kody takes a deep breath, knowing full well that each word spoken, each reaction given, will be under a microscope, not just from the judge himself, but from the very people who have shared his life. Today, the past cannot be hidden. Every decision, every betrayal, every whispered promise, all would rise to the surface in this courtroom. One simple yet terrifying question lay across all their minds. Would the family survive the storm, or would it be the courtroom that would finally tear them asunder? The courtroom doors open once again, and the atmosphere feels thicker than before, filled with anticipation. The family members re-enter the courtroom, their faces set with determination, mixed with anxiety and simmering tension. Kody walks to his seat, his eyes locking with those of his wives. There is a flicker of something unsaid, a mixture of fear, regret, and the faint hope that maybe, just maybe, things can be controlled. But deep down, everybody knows that any notion of control is only an illusion today. The judge calls the session to order. The next witness is Robyn. She rises stiffly, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. When her voice finally starts, it is steady, yet weighted with a year's emotional load. She recounts specific instances of promises Kody made but failed to keep. Moments where she felt overlooked and times when her concerns were dismissed. Each story falls like a quiet explosion in the courtroom, echoing against the high ceilings. Christine's eyes narrow, not in anger, but in careful calculation. She has heard some of Robyn's stories, but to hear them spoken aloud in such a formal, legal setting lends it an added weight. Janelle shifts slightly, her fingers tapping the edge of the table. Even Meri, who often sits detached and watchful, can't hide the tension tightening around her throat as Robyn's voice grows more emotional. I have loved this family, Robyn says, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. But love doesn't mean silence. I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when there are decisions being made that hurt the people I care about the most. The defense attorney rises in a flash, countering Robyn's impassioned words with calm reason. While Ms. Robyn's feelings are valid, we must remember that family decisions are complex, she says. Not every choice can please everyone, and sometimes misunderstandings occur despite good intentions. But the prosecution is ready. They present a series of documents, texts, and photographs that directly counter the defense's arguments. The room grows tense, the quiet hum of the air conditioning almost deafening in the charged silence. Christine leans forward slightly, studying every piece of evidence, her mind racing to piece together patterns she had suspected for years but could never prove. Janelle's hand trembles just a little as she flips through her own notes, while Meri's gaze stays sharp, dissecting every angle of Robyn's testimony. The first emotional explosion comes when the family assets come up for discussion. A series of previously concealed transactions are finally revealed to all in the room. Some of the funds were funneled without the other wives' knowledge to favor one of them, and Robyn's lips part slightly, caught between disbelief and anger. Christine, whispering to herself, says under her breath, "So this is why things never added up?" Kody shifts uncomfortably in his seat, having always made it a point to project an aura of calm and composure. The pieces of the puzzle have been revealed now, and his unshakable exterior has started to falter. Beads of sweat break out at his temple. Janelle looks over at him. A flicker of concern crosses her face before she refocuses on the proceedings. Meri's eyes narrow, and the anger underlying that quiet gaze is unmistakable. The harsh court lights cast sharp shadows across the room, amplifying the weight of each revelation. The air is almost suffocating as tension pulls taut like a noose around everyone in the room. Every whisper, every cough, and every shuffle of paper seems magnified. It was as if even the room itself was holding its breath, anticipating the next emotional blow. The prosecuting attorney then dramatically introduces the most shocking piece of evidence, an audio recording of Kody and a family advisor. On the recording, Kody talks about decisions made behind closed doors, revealing a plan that may have changed the balance in the family. The words are clear. Promises were made that were never intended to be kept. The courtroom almost immediately erupts. Robyn's hand goes to her mouth in shock. Christine leans back, eyes wide in stunned disbelief and vindication. Janelle's pen falls from her fingers, hitting the polished floor. Meri's lips thin into a tight line, her eyes narrowing in silent fury. Kody swallows hard. His hands clench into fists on the table. He tries to speak, but words stumble over each other. The reality of his own actions, now laid bare for everyone, including himself, is impossible to deny. I thought I was protecting everyone, he says finally, voice barely above a whisper. I didn't realize how it would hurt. The judge leans forward, studying him closely. Mr. Brown, she says in a firm but guarded manner, intent and perception are not always aligned, but the consequences of actions matter just as much as intentions. Her eyes make a sweep of the room, pausing on each wife in turn. Her words hang in the air like a storm cloud about to break. Tears well up in Robyn's eyes and begin to streak down her cheeks. She tries to compose herself, quickly wiping them away, but the raw emotion cannot be hidden. Christine, though outwardly composed, clenches her fists under the table, her jaw tight. Janelle's shoulders shake as she takes a quiet, shuddering breath. Even Meri, always so controlled, closes her eyes for a moment as if bracing herself against the wave of emotion that has overtaken the courtroom. The next few moments are a blur of emotional confrontation. Christine rises to speak, her voice shaking yet forceful. Kody, I have stayed silent for too long. I have tried to trust you, to believe in your promises, but it's crystal clear that not all of us were considered equally. Today, I demand accountability. Robyn joins in, her voice shaking but determined. This isn't about winning or losing in court. This is about respect, honesty, and finally being seen as an equal part of this family. And I can't stay silent anymore. Janelle's voice breaks as she speaks next. I've always wanted peace. I wanted to believe we could navigate this together, but now I just don't know anymore. I feel betrayed. Meri, calm but icy, speaks her words in quiet precision. Words and promises mean little when actions show otherwise. I want the truth. Nothing more, nothing less. The tension becomes almost unbearable in this room. All eyes are now upon Kody, the head of this fractured family, as he takes on board one jibe after another, adding to the cumulative weight of all the accusations. His face is pale and the lines of stress are deeper in his features. His hands fidget, the fingers tap against the polished table, a rhythm that belies the chaos inside him. The judge calls for another brief recess, his manner suggesting that the emotional intensity has reached a level that requires a pause. As the family steps out of the courtroom, the whispering begins again. Lawyers confer quietly, witnesses huddle in corners, and the air outside the courtroom is thick with anticipation. Kody walks down the hall, his feet moving slowly, his thoughts racing. Every step feels heavier than the one before it. He knows that what has unfolded is only the beginning. The real confrontations are yet to come, and he is painfully aware that the bonds of his family are fraying faster than he can mend them. Robyn sits on a bench, silent, and stares at the floor as she tries to steady her breathing. Christine paces in the corner, mumbling fragmented questions and accusations to herself. Janelle leans against the wall, lost in thought, while Meri stands apart, calculating and observing, her mind sharp and unrelenting. The ante is raised as the family takes their seats once again. All are well aware that the next witness, the next round of evidence, and the next blow-up will determine not only the legal outcome, but the fragile state of their relationships with each other. Secrets, betrayals, and years-old resentments aren't whispered anymore. They're open, willing to set off a confrontation that will forever change the Brown family. The courtroom is electric when the session is about to resume. All wait for the next moments to escalate further, with emotional walls crumbling and alliances being tested. The question on all their lips is simple and terrifying. Who will emerge unscathed, and who will be forever changed by the truths about to unfold? The lights in the courtroom flicker slightly as the doors close behind the last of the audience. There is a heavy silence in the room, as if everyone knows that in the next few moments the Brown family will never be the same again. Kody fidgets in his chair, his hands clasped tightly in front of him, knuckles white from the strain. There is a faint scent of polished wood and worn leather within the air, mixed with the tangible tension. Every pair of eyes is fixed on the front of the room, anticipating further revelations. The prosecuting attorney rises, a calm but deadly presence, and calls the next witness, a family assistant who has quietly observed for years. She walks to the stand, adjusts the microphone, and the courtroom instinctively leans in. Her testimony is precise worded, but each word speaks of years of secrets, a silent accumulation of truths now demanding exposure. "I observe patterns," she begins, voice steady but heavy with emotion. Certain decisions were made in private, excluding some members of the family. These decisions affected finances, family plans, and even personal trust among the wives. Christine's eyes widen. She digs her nails into the polished wood of the table, her knuckles white. Robyn's shoulders stiffen, her jaw tightens with a premonition of the storm of words to come. Janelle leans forward slightly, her lips pressed in a thin line, but Meri's hands remain folded, silent, but lethal. And then the assistant launches into specifics. Trips planned without consultation, financial agreements signed when some wives were kept in the dark, and private promises repeatedly broken. Every word falls like a hammer, resonating off the high walls of the courtroom. With every sentence, the tension mounts. Kody swallows hard, looking at each wife in turn. His eyes linger on Christine, who now sits rigid, absorbing every revelation with a mixture of hurt and vindication. Robyn's face is pale, a mix of shock and sorrow etched into her features. Janelle fidgets slightly, and Meri's gaze is sharp, cutting through the room with quiet intensity. Then comes the moment that turns the courtroom upside down. The assistant presents a folder containing letters, emails, and documents that had never been seen before. Some were unsigned, some carefully coded, but together they reveal a web of decisions that Kody had made, choices that benefited one wife over the others, manipulated situations, and concealed truths that many had assumed were being freely shared. Robyn's lips part, and a gasp escapes as she reads through one email that clearly shows Kody had promised her financial security, only to redirect funds elsewhere without her knowledge. Christine's eyes glimmer with tears. Her fingers are trembling as she clutches a folded note that confirms a suspicion she had harbored for years. Janelle quickly turns away, blinking hard to fight back tears, while Meri's face hardens, her jaw tight, her lips pressed in a thin line. The defense attorney gets up, trying to minimize the damage. These documents may show planning, but intentions matter. She argues, voice steady. No harm was intended. Decisions were made to protect the family's best interests as a whole. But the prosecuting attorney doesn't stop there. She reveals a piece of evidence, a recorded conversation between Kody and one of the wives discussing plans kept secret from the other wives. The courtroom falls silent as the recording plays, the unmistakable voice of Kody speaking. Every word, every inflection carries the weight of deception. Christine winces, both her hand going to her mouth. Robyn's eyes widen with impending tears about to fall. Janelle's shoulders heave, and even Meri, who rarely shows much emotion, closes her eyes a moment, taking in the betrayal. Kody shifts uncomfortably, perspiration forming at his temples as the weight of his actions fully hits him. The judge leans forward, her eyes cutting across the room with an unmistakable intensity. "Mr. Brown," she says in a measured but firm voice, "what we see here is a pattern of selective disclosure and decisions made behind closed doors. This court will consider the implications carefully. The atmosphere in the courtroom is almost unbearable. Every whisper, every cough and shuffle of papers seems to reverberate like thunder. The Brown family sits stone-faced, each with a storm brewing inside, betrayal, anger, sadness, and incomprehensibility." Christine speaks finally, her voice trembling but resolved. "Kody, all these years, I trusted you, and I trusted in the promises of this family that you kept saying we were building, yet now it's clear some of us were never really part of it. I'm asking for the truth, and I will take nothing less than that." Robyn stands next, tears streaming down her face. "I cannot live in a house where trust is optional. I have loved this family with all my heart, but silence has only allowed the truth to be buried, and I am done pretending." Janelle's voice cracks as she adds, "I've always wanted peace, to believe in the bond we share, but it's clear that decisions have been made behind closed doors that hurt more than anyone realizes. I can't ignore it anymore." Meri's voice is low, but the weight of those words cannot go unnoticed. Actions speak louder than words. The time for pretenses is over. I need the truth, and I will not be satisfied with anything else. The courtroom waits in tense silence while Kody tries to answer. His voice is low, strained, trembling with a mixture of guilt and desperation. I thought I was protecting everyone. I never meant to hurt any of you. I only wanted to manage the family to keep it safe." But the words fall flat. They are not enough. The wife's eyes pierce him, full of those years of frustration, pain, and disappointment which no explanation will ever erase. Christine slowly shakes her head, her lips pressed into a tight line. Robyn looks down, struggling to steady herself. Janelle covers her mouth, while Meri's eyes glint with a quiet, unyielding resolve. The prosecuting attorney then presents the final piece of evidence for the session, a shocking revelation that connects several previously revealed secrets. A string of undisclosed financial transactions which not only favored certain individuals but also hid critical information about the family estate. The evidence suggests deliberate deception and manipulation. It's as if the courtroom could crack under the weight of truth. Kody's hands clench, the sound of his knuckles on the wooden table almost deafening in the silence. He tries to defend himself, though he stammers his way through explanations that fall apart under scrutiny. Each rebuttal just seems to tighten the spotlight on his mistakes. Robyn leans back, exhaling shakily, tears glinting in her eyes. Christine folds her arms, jaw tight, eyes narrowing as she studies the documents. Janelle presses her lips together, fighting back sobs, and Meri's calm exterior is shattered for a brief moment by the sheer intensity of the revelations. Once more, the judge calls for a short recess, and the tension in the room is so thick it could almost be cut with a knife. Whispers spread like wildfire outside the courtroom among staff and audience members. The family members retreat to their corners, each dealing with both the emotional and legal consequences of this hearing. Kody paces down the hall, his steps heavy, his mind filled with the possibilities of what will happen to him. Robyn sits on the bench, staring at the floor, trying to steady her trembling hands. Christine paces and mutters incoherent bits of questions and frustrations. Janelle leans against the wall, eyes closed for a brief second, and Meri stays distant, but her sharp gaze never wavers. The second session ends with almost unbearable suspense. The audience, both in the courtroom and those watching from their homes, can tell that the most salient, game-changing secrets have yet to be revealed. What's to come will not only push the limits of the law, but also those fragile bonds of a family already pulled tight. As Kody reclines back in his chair, it hits him. The courtroom is no longer just about legal argument, but it has now become that stage where truth, betrayal, and the raw, unfiltered emotions buried for decades come forth. And as the next session draws near, one thing is for sure: the fallout will be explosive, unforgettable, and impossible to ignore. The courtroom feels heavier than ever as everyone returns from recess. The hum of fluorescent lights above seems louder, almost oppressive. The polished wooden benches are a silent witness to the tension building in the room. Kody sits at the center, his hands clasped so tightly that his knuckles are pale. His eyes flick to each wife in turn, searching for a flicker of understanding, a hint of forgiveness, but finds only suspicion, hurt, and simmering anger. The judge clears her throat, signaling the session to resume. The next testimony is expected to be crucial, and the prosecuting attorney does not waste any time calling the next witness. A close family friend who has been a witness to the interactions of Kody with his wives for years. She takes the stand with quiet determination, adjusting the microphone before beginning. "I have seen patterns," she says softly, voice carrying in the still courtroom. Patterns of favoritism, secret decisions, and words that never matched actions. The family members were often left in the dark about choices that affected them deeply. Christine slides forward in her seat, her hands clenching on the edge of the table. Robyn's lips press tightly together and her jaw quivers as she listens. Janelle's eyes dart to Kody, searching for answers, while Meri remains stoic, her eyes narrowed and raking over the witness like a hawk. He then proceeds to relate specific incidents, each story more disturbing than the last. There were decisions about money in which not all agreed, plans about the children's future changed in secret, and promises that were broken, small at first, but some incidents building into a pattern of betrayal. Each revelation lands like a sharp strike in this courtroom, going through the room like a bell tolling. Kody shifts uncomfortably, swallowing hard. For the first time, there is a visible crack in his composed facade as his gaze flits to each wife. Christine exhales sharply, her face a picture of disbelieving vindication. Robyn leans forward, hands clasped tightly in front of her, struggling to steady her breath. Janelle's fingers drum nervously against the polished table while Meri's lips press into a thin, unwavering line, her eyes locking onto Kody's with cold intensity. The tension is ramped up when the prosecuting attorney produces a new piece of evidence, a series of private messages between Kody and one of the wives that clearly reveal intentions kept secret from the others. The words were stark, clear, and revealing of a manipulation that had been going on for many years. The room reacts almost immediately. Robyn lets out a slight gasp, her hand flying to her mouth, which shakes. Christine reads about the betrayal as her body leans back, her eyes wide. Janelle closes her eyes, fighting back tears, while Meri's jaw tightens into a controlled storm brewing beneath her calm exterior. The courtroom goes silent as Kody tries to defend himself, his voice low and strained. I thought I was doing what was best for everyone," he stammers, sweat beading on his forehead. "I never meant to hurt anyone. I thought I was protecting the family." Christine cuts in sharply, her voice trembling as she rises to have her say, "Protecting us? How is hiding decisions from all of us protecting us? How is leaving some of us in the dark keeping this family safe?" Robyn rises too, her face wet with tears, her voice hoarse with emotion. "I cannot keep on pretending that everything is fine. Every secret, every lie left on me scars that will never heal. I've tried to be silent, but I could not anymore." Janelle, always composed, now breaks down utterly, her hands covering her face. Her sobs resound softly in the high-ceilinged courtroom. Meri, still composed but visibly tense, speaks for the first time. Her voice is measured, clear, and cutting. Actions speak louder than words. We have seen the reality of those actions. Pretenses are over, and it's time to face the truth. The prosecuting attorney leans forward, his eyes aglow with intensity. "Your Honor, the evidence presented so far clearly defines selective favoritism, secrecy, and emotional manipulation. These are not isolated incidents, but patterns that have reached deeply into each member's psyche." The defense rises again, trying to calm the room. While these actions may seem questionable, intentions were never malicious. The goal was always to maintain balance and care for the family as a whole. But the room does not respond. The evidence speaks louder than words, and the wives' emotions have now become visible in a storm. Christine's fingers clench into fists on the table. Robyn's chest heaves with her efforts to hold back her sobs. Janelle wipes at her tears furiously, while Meri's piercing gaze makes it clear that her patience has worn thin. Then comes the breaking point, with the prosecuting attorney producing one last damning piece of evidence: the financial documents, unsigned agreements, and letters carefully concealed by Kody that outline his repeatedly favoring one wife over the others. The implications are devastating, not just in a legal sense, but in an emotional way as well. Kody slumps back in his chair, his face pale, his eyes darting between the women who for decades have been the center of his life. His lips quiver as he finally speaks, voice barely audible. I didn't realize. I thought... Christine slams her hand on the table, interrupting him. Thought what? That we wouldn't notice? That we wouldn't suffer because of your decisions? Robyn's voice rises, fierce with emotion. This is not just about finances. This is about respect, honesty, and trust. We can't keep living in a house where some of us are always kept in the dark. Janelle's shoulders shake violently as she sobs openly, and Meri's calm exterior finally cracks slightly, her eyes glistening with the edge of tears she refuses to let fall. The judge leans forward, watching the chaos with a measured but watchful eye, aware that the courtroom has transformed into a battlefield of raw, unfiltered emotions. Kody's defense crumbles under the weight of these emotional testimonies and tangible evidence. The room offers no sympathy as he struggles to regain composure and explain himself. Stripped of his carefully constructed defenses, the wives' voices rise, one after another, demanding accountability and truth. The only sounds in the courtroom are stifled sobs or an intake of sharp breaths as Christine, Robyn, and Janelle continue to talk about years of betrayal and secrets that have finally been laid bare. Meri's voice, when she speaks, is cold and cutting, her words slicing through the tension with surgical precision. With the judge's solicitation for a short recess, he recognizes that emotions are running high to such a point that even the most seasoned observers of the courtroom can hardly process. As the family exits, each member carries a storm within them. Resentment, heartbreak, and a growing sense that the decisions of the past have irrevocably altered the present. Kody paces up and down the hall, feeling the weight of everything bearing down on him. He knows the session to come will cut deeper yet, and that these revelations are a long way from being over. Robyn sits silently, staring at the floor and trying to steady shaking hands. Christine paces, her mutterings fragmented accusations and questions. Janelle leans against the wall, taking deep, shuddering breaths, and Meri stands aloof. But every fiber of her being is tuned into the storm that is about to continue. The audience inside the courtroom and afar can feel the tension mount. The family is at a breaking point, and the next session is going to be even more explosive as emotions, betrayals, and legal consequences collide in ways no one could predict. The final session starts, and the courtroom quiets down almost uncomfortably. It's understood by all that today's proceedings could, in a very real way, define the future of the Brown family forever. Kody sits rigidly at the center table, his hands folded tightly together, the knuckles white from tension. Wives. Christine, Robyn, Janelle, and Meri all sit in various states of composure, each carrying emotional weight from revelations in sessions past. Even the spectators can tell this is where the storm begins to reach its climax. The judge clears her throat as her demeanor informs the interested parties of the last evidence and testimony that will be heard before a determination in this matter is arrived at. The prosecuting attorney rises first, her presence commanding. Your Honor, the evidence presented over the past sessions demonstrates a clear pattern of selective disclosure, favoritism, and actions that have caused deep emotional and financial harm within the family unit. Christine's fingers knot on the table as she listens. Memories of years spent feeling unseen and unheard flood back. The whispered promises that were broken, the hidden decisions that affected her life, the times she felt disregarded. Robyn bends slightly, eyes brimming with tears, remembering moments in which she fought to protect her children and herself while feeling betrayed by the very family she trusted. Janelle's hands rest tensely in her lap, shoulders tight. Meri sits rigid, expression unreadable, as if carefully calculating every word that follows. The defense attorney rises, trying to temper the proceedings with measured reasoning. While we realize that some decisions may have caused emotional strain, there was no intent to harm. The choices made were intended to balance the needs of the entire family and protect its long-term stability. But the room remains unconvinced. The weight of evidence presented in the sessions of emails, recordings, financial documents, and emotional testimonies hung over Kody's words like a shadow. The tension is palpable. All eyes in this courtroom are on him now while they wait to see how he will respond. The judge looks around the room, his gaze stopping on each family member. Mr. Brown, by your actions and decisions, your family members have been caused a lot of emotional distress. While the court realizes that managing many different familial relationships is difficult, from the evidence provided, it seems that there was consistent favoritism and the suppression of important information from the rest. Let's take these testimonies and evidence into account and then proceed with the judgment. Kody swallows hard. He knows that the verdict, when it comes, will not only determine legal outcomes, but also the fragile emotional equilibrium of his family. Christine exhales sharply. Robyn shifts in her seat, Janelle presses her lips together, and Meri's gaze remains unyielding. The weight of anticipation is almost suffocating. The court resumes after a brief deliberation, and the judge begins to make her statement. Having reviewed all testimonies, documents, and evidence presented before the court, this court finds that although there is no criminal intent, there does lie failure of equality and transparency between family members. There was selective decision-making which caused emotional and financial damage. The court advises a structured plan of restoration that may include independent financial oversight and mediation in personal grievances. The verdict can almost be felt, hanging in the air like a thick cloud. Kody exhales slowly, a mixture of relief and resignation washing over him. He meets the eyes of his wives, unsure what he will find there. Christine's gaze is steady, though wary. Robyn's tears stream freely now. Janelle's shoulders relax slightly, while Meri's expression remains calm but thoughtful, and her evaluation of this new reality was far from over. As the judge steps down, the courtroom begins to empty slowly. The Brown family sat for a moment longer, taking in the implications. Outside, the sunlight fell sharper, almost intrusive, a reminder that life continues beyond the courtroom walls and that decisions here would ripple for years. Christine finally speaks in the hallway, her voice soft but resolute. It's not over. Just because the court has spoken doesn't mean we are healed. There's still a lot to work through between us, with Kody, and with ourselves. Robyn nods, wiping her tears. I know. I want to believe this is a step forward, but it feels fragile. We have to rebuild trust, not just follow a court plan. Janelle leans against the wall, exhaling slowly. I thought I could handle it all before, but this shows me how much has been bottled up. I can't ignore it anymore. Meri, standing somewhat to one side, finally speaks up, her tone quiet but incisive. We've faced the truth. Now we must decide what to do with it. This is our choice, our responsibility. Kody watches them, his face a flutter of emotions, remorse, confusion, hope, and fear. He knows the road ahead won't be easy. Every relationship in the family will need rebuilding. Some scars may never fully heal, but there is a chance to start anew, guided by the hard lessons learned in the courtroom. The scene shifts slightly, and audiences get a glimpse into each of their inner reflections afterwards. Christine, sitting in her car, staring out the window, thinking about all the years of patience, hurt, and quiet observation. Robyn plays with her children's hands, her heart heavy but determined to create a sense of security and honesty moving forward. Janelle just sits, quietly contemplating the battle ahead of how to balance her feelings and longing for peace. And Meri, always fastidious, writes in a journal of what truths have come to light and what her next steps should be. Even Kody retreats to a private space, reflecting on the consequences of his decisions. He acknowledges his mistakes, but also grapples with the weight of responsibility for the entire family. The courtroom might have given guidance, but the emotional and relational work is only just beginning. The final moments in the courtroom are quiet yet full of unspoken intensity. Cameras and spectators have gone, leaving only the family and the judge, whose gaze lingers fleetingly on them, perhaps in silent hope that they can find a way forward. Outside the courthouse, an uneasy calm hovers. The Brown family walks together, yet apart, physically close but emotionally tentative. Times ahead will be hard, full of reflection, reconciliation, and perhaps unexpected healing. Each of them carries with him lessons learned, scars endured, and the knowledge that transparency, honesty and communication will be imperative going forward. Kody speaks almost to himself, but loud enough for the wives to hear, "I've made mistakes. I know that now, but we can try to go forward together if we're willing to face the truth honestly." Christine's gaze meets his, a flicker of cautious hope in her eyes. "We'll see, Kody. It's going to take time, and we'll need to see real changes, not just promises." Robyn nods, a small smile breaking through her tears. "I want to believe in us again, but we have to be honest, and we have to hold each other accountable." Janelle exhales, feeling a subtle release after weeks of tension. "I hope we can find a way to heal. It's not over, but maybe this is a start." Meri, ever composed, finally allows herself a small, rare smile. "The path ahead is ours to navigate. We must learn from today and choose our next steps wisely." The Brown family leaves the courthouse, every step a landmark of history, emotion, and knowledge that theirs is to be continued well beyond the courtroom walls. The sun is setting, casting long shadows as if it would remind them that the past will always be there, but the future is theirs to make.